Well, I want to ask you a question. So we're coming to the end of summer, and I want to know if anyone went out this summer and looked up at the stars. Did anyone here go stargazing this summer? If you did, you can give me a big thumbs up or raise your hand. Yeah. Well, when we look up at the stars, it can remind us of how amazing and big God is. He put all of those stars and the planets in the sky. So I want to know what you know about the stars. Did anybody, when they went stargazing, did you see the moon? Give me a thumbs up. Did you see the moon out there? What about the Big Dipper? Anybody seen the Big Dipper? Yeah, the Little Dipper? Okay, has anybody seen some of the planets? You can actually see Venus and Jupiter and Mars, which is kind of reddish right now, just with your eyes. Well, in the Bible, God actually told someone to go out stargazing. In the Bible, you might have heard this story before. Does anybody know? You can yell it out. Does anyone know who God told to go stargazing? That's right. Good, Fiona. Thank you for, it's my daughter out there. So in Genesis 15, actually, God said to Abraham, look up at the stars and count how many there are, if indeed you can. And he said, that many is how many your offspring will be. Well, do you think that Abraham could really count the stars? No. Can any of you count the stars? Some of you are pretty smart. So, anybody? Yeah? No? Well, why would God tell Abraham to count the stars if he couldn't really count the stars? Anybody ever wondered that? Well, God was making Abraham a promise, wasn't he? He was saying, Abraham, I know you can't count the stars. No human could ever count the stars. He was making Abraham a promise. That's how many your offspring will be. Your family will be so big, you will have so many descendants that you can't even count them. God was making Abraham a big promise. He said, through you, I am going to bless peoples from all the nations of the earth. Well, I have something with me here. Maybe you noticed a little object under the sheet. And this is something my family went out stargazing this summer, and we took this with us. Can anybody guess what it might be? I heard a telescope, maybe. Yeah, you're right. So this is kind of a little telescope. There are much bigger telescopes than this. Why would we take this with us to go stargazing? Yeah.
So you can look closer at the stars.
You're right. You're right. To get a closer look, right? You can sort of focus in. Maybe you want to look at a planet. We were trying to see Jupiter or Mars. And suddenly, something that seems really tiny, it's millions and millions of miles away, suddenly it comes into focus and you can see it better, closer up. Now, did Abraham have one of these when he went out stargazing? No, he didn't. This wasn't invented actually until much, much later. But it's a neat tool that we have. Well, I want to talk to you about something else we have. And Abraham didn't have this either at the time. The Bible, what I have here tonight, is actually kind of like a telescope for us. It allows us to see more clearly God's plan, his big rescue plan. His plan to send a Savior to save us from sin and death and to make all things new. Because we have the Bible, we can actually see things more clearly. We can see the promises that God has been making from the very beginning to Adam and Eve, to Noah, to Abraham, Moses, King David, the prophets. And when we see those promises, we actually see that all those promises were pointing to one big promise. And that one big promise was actually a person, Jesus, our Savior. See, Jesus is the hero of the story. The whole Old Testament actually points to Jesus when we study that. He's the hero of the story. He's the one that came into the world to save us. And he defeated sin and death when he rose again from the dead. Now, our telescope's pretty neat. But when we look out into space, there's still a lot that we can't see. I mean, we're here and we're not there. And some of those planets are like 55 million miles away. So it's still fuzzy for us. And I think even when we have the Bible, which is an amazing gift, I want you to know what an amazing gift God's Word is. But even with the Bible, sometimes God's plans don't entirely make sense to us. Maybe for you right now with COVID and going to school online, maybe you think, I don't understand how that fits into God's big plan. But before I end, I want to leave you with this. I want you to know that the Bible shows us that God has been faithful to his people from the beginning of time, and he has kept every single one of his promises. And he will continue to do that. And even when things look fuzzy and you don't know why things are happening, no matter what happens, you can trust God. So when you look up at the stars, I want you to remember that. And I hope you get to go stargazing again sometime as these days get shorter and it's easier to do that.